Once again, good afternoon, good people out there. Yeah, this is another time with Emsarp on Back to the Sound Basics. Back to the Sound Basics. And then today, I'm so excited because it happens to be another day that we can learn a lot and do the needful. I mean, with regards to sound, I've already said this, that anyone who does sound, who uses music for anything, it is only prudent for you to learn why you do what you do. And that is the premises for bringing to you sound basics. All right, we all learn, we share idea. After the event or after the program, a lot of people call in and then they just give their comments. Some give their comments, others give their contributions, others give questions. All right, God bless you all out there for what you're doing and for always being with us. Now, today is a very interesting day because I happen to be continuing from what we did last week, and then we are to continue and get to know what actually each and every one of those notes has for us. And let me say a very big thank you to Emsarp Music and IT Services. And then also a very good afternoon to Mr. Dan Bassi of Bassi Mix, Koda Kofi Usudiantu of Coded Studios, and then Calabashon Katai of Streamline Productions, Clue Andrews of KAMEN Studios, OT, Dennysarp Music, and then Design Impact. All right, this program is made possible. Also, a very big shout out to SKB Beats and my own man Clement Afre of CBC Incorporated, CBC Hype, CBC Ushering Team, and all that. He's in charge. All right, so today we on our episode 3, we look at equalization techniques. Equalization techniques. I mean, last week on our notes, we spoke about what frequency is. All right. And we looked at a lot of things concerning frequency. We said frequency has to do with the number of vibrations in a matter, or if a matter within a second. So if thousands of vibrations occur in 1 second, we call it 1K or 1,000 hertz. We measure it in hertz. We said frequency is measured in hertz. We also spoke about the various bands or the various range of frequencies that we have. And we spoke about all the 3 basic ranges or all the 3 basic bands. And we also went ahead to break it down into further 7 basic ones or 7 further bands. And so we also spoke about the low or the sub-low, and then the low. We spoke about the low mid, the upper mid, and then the high mid. We also spoke about the brilliance and presence. All right. So today, and we demonstrated with some of the things concerning those frequency bands or ranges of frequencies that we did, which is the audio frequency, the audible frequency, which our human ear can perceive. Okay. So today we are continuing, and then it's an interesting thing. I also spoke about something, and that is on the premises that I'm bringing today's lesson. I said that the only way you can use to balance your frequencies in a particular music or in a particular setting, your vocal, whatever, the only way you can use or you can go through to balance it off has to do with equalization. So I said equalization is the process of balancing the frequency bands or ranges. Okay, and then I also spoke about what an equalizer is. It is the device or that particular circuit which we use to effect the equalization process. Okay, so it is on this premises that we are coming to continue with what we spoke about last week. Sound basics is all about why you do what you do, why you do what you do, and how you do it. Okay, so let me take a very quick commercial break. And when we return, we zoom into action. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. A very good afternoon to all our viewers and our listeners, wherever you find us and you are watching us. Today, I said we're talking about equalization techniques. Equalization techniques. We've spoken about frequency as part of the characteristics. One of the characteristics that help us to a characteristic of sound, basically. So today we are moving on how we can balance our frequencies so that they will be of good use to us. To start with, let me first explain what equalization is. What equalization is. What is equalization? When you talk about equalization, we say it is the process. It is the process of adjusting the balance between frequency components. Okay? The process of adjusting the balance between frequency components. All right. So within any components, whether it's in sound, whether it's in any other electronic component, we say that equalization has to do with when you are appropriating the various frequencies of your waves. All right. Okay. So the most well-known use of equalization is that it's usually in sound recording and in sound production. Okay. Let me take it again. I said it is the process of adjusting the balance between frequency components within an electronic signal. Within an electronic signal. And so there can be several equalizations elsewhere, as we know, but we are limiting ourselves to sound waves production. And where we usually encounter equalization most is during sound recording and reproduction process. When you are setting up a sound in an auditorium, in a studio, wherever you set it up, okay, it's very key and it's very important that you equalize the room, you equalize your board, you equalize your particular instrument that you get so that they can really come out in a balanced form. One day we will talk about balancing because there are different kinds of balance. We have the tonal balance, the dynamic balance, and all that. Okay, the harmonic balance and all that. So today we are limiting ourselves to equalization, how we can get a balanced sound so that the frequencies that interfere with each other can either be boosted or can be cut down, can be attenuated. All right. So there is an equipment or a tool that helps us to do this, and that equipment is called an equalizer. An equalizer. Okay? So it is the equalizer that strengthens or weakens the energy of a specific frequency band or frequency range. If you have an equalizer and you want to increase the particular frequency range, it is the equalizer you use. If you have an equalizer and you want to decrease the particular range of frequency of within that band, it is the equalizer that you use. So they either strengthen, they either boost, they either increase, or they either weaken, or they weaken the energy, the level, the loudness, okay, of that particular specific frequency. Okay, so without much ado, let's take a look at an example of an equalizer. On your screen, what you see there will be an what you see on your screen right now is a graphic equalizer, an example of a graphic equalizer. Okay, I know most of you might have encountered this type of equalizer all over severally, especially those of us who have been using analog boards for quite a long time, and we are still using it. I still use the analog board, even though I have to myself the almighty Midas M32, but I still enjoy the warmness of the analog stuff. So this is an example of an equalizer that we use. And equalizers are basically used in the recording studios, radio studios, production and control rooms, and live sound reinforcement, and in instrument amplifiers. There are some amplifiers in especially bass guitar and other keyboards, even keyboard. You can have an instrument you can have a particular EQ there, which has the 3 bands, especially the parametric EQ. Okay, or no, usually they use the normal semi-parametric. Okay, you soon know the various kinds of EQs that we have, but we will limit ourselves to only 2 in our daily activities as we progress. We will limit ourselves to the graphic EQ and the parametric EQ only. Okay, so equalizers are usually used in these areas, in your halls of events, in your various places of events, in your auditoriums, churches and pubs and those places. All right, you have it there to help you curtail all those sounds and various stuffs that are not needed. Now, equalization may also be used to eliminate or reduce unwanted sounds. Unwanted sounds. Okay, so for example, there may be a low hum coming in from a guitar amplifier. It is the equalizer that you use to cut it down. Okay, or you can also use it to make certain instruments or voices more prominent or more less. Okay, more prominent, and it's also there to enhance particular aspects of an instrument's tone and combat feedback, that howling sound in various PA systems. Let me explain more here. If you have an equalizer, there are numerous stuff that it is able to use or it's being used for. Now, with an EQ, what we are saying here is that it is used to eliminate unwanted sounds. For instance, you are setting up a sound in your auditorium, your church. A program is going to happen and you are setting up a sound in your church. And all of a sudden you hear, ooh. The moment you hear that ooh or ooh, which is ranging around that 180, 200 hertz, all that you need to do is that get your equalizer, get through that equalizer band, especially those ones using the graphic EQ. Just locate that particular frequency which is making that humming sound in the low ends and cut it, drop it down. All right. Also, for instance, there is a vocal microphone which is so down or which sounds dull. You need to use the equalizer to boost it, either because human voices are very prominent within the area of between 1K and 6K or even 5K. You can even trim it down to 4K because it is where the ear is so sharp and very rapt to hear sounds from. And this is where these are the range of tones or the range of frequencies that we usually use our voices to project. Okay, so it's either you use it to reduce unwanted sounds like low humming coming from a guitar amp, or make certain instruments or voices more prominent. Also, it is used also to enhance particular aspects of an instrument's tone or combat feedback and howling in a public address system. In an event where you get so much of howling sound, I usually refer to it as when. I mean, those stuffs, you can easily curtail it by using your EQ. The moment you know that this is where it is coming from, then you are good to go. You are good to go. All right. Now let's also take this. Equalizers also are used in music production to adjust the timbre of. Equalizers are also used in music production to adjust the timbre of individual instruments and voices by adjusting their frequency content and to fit individual instruments within the overall frequency spectrum of the mix. What does it mean? All that I mean to say is that every instrument has got its own color, tone, characteristic, and that is what we term as timbre. All right? Every instrument has got its own color, characteristic, tone, and how it stands out when it is being played. When voices are heard, you know that this particular voice, the tone it sounds in your ears, you could know that, or how it pitches, you could know that this sound comes from a female voice, and this also sound comes also from a particular male voice. All right. So that is the timbre. Every instrument, when you are playing a keyboard, you know that this is a keyboard, a piano playing, this is a synth bass playing, this is a sax playing, this is trumpet playing. This is, every instrument has got its own color, the color of its tone. All right. So the equalizers are there to help adjust each and every timbre, every tone, every characteristic of every instrument within that particular music, so that they can all fit into the mix. It is the equalizer that does it. The equalizer does a lot of job. In my daily activity as a sound engineer or as an audio producer, what I do is that before I tackle any other thing, before I do most of the work, I make sure my equalization is tight and solid. Right after my gain staging, the next thing that comes to mind is my equalization. Okay? I don't hurriedly go and add on coloring of by way of using effects and so much of those stuffs. I usually work around my equalization before I move on to any other, because if you don't work at your equalization well, most of the instruments may not fit in, and they may either sound bad or increasingly outrageous, or they may sound dull. So they won't fit in the mix that you are making. And every mix has got its own tone, and every mix has to do with what it's meant to be. Okay? So when you just adjust the frequency of that content so that each and every individual instrument will fit in a whole spectrum of that mix. Now, the most common equalizers in music production are parametric EQs, semi-parametric, graphic EQ, peak EQ, and program equalizers. All right, so we will limit ourselves to parametric and maybe semi-parametric and graphic EQ. That is what most of us have been using in our daily activities. All right, so example of a parametric EQ, or when you talk about parametric EQ, it is that type of EQ which has got the 3-band knobs of an EQ, which have got the 3-band knobs of an EQ. And these 3 bands have got a volume, all right, and then the width or the center width or the quality, which we usually denote it by Q, the quality, as well as the frequency band. All right, you have the volume, the band, the frequency band, as well as the bandwidth or the quality, the Q of it. So usually whenever you find yourself those kind of equalizers that have got most of those 3 features for each particular frequency, if it's treble, you see that the treble has got a treble volume, it has got it has got a Q or a quality attenuator, and then it also has got a volume or the frequency band. Okay, and usually they have 3, as I said, they have 3 parameters to work, and that is what we refer to as parametric EQ. Now there are several uses of EQ or equalizers. There are several uses of them, but we are going to connect ourselves with only 3 of them. And these 3 common applications for equalizer include: 1, correct problems in a recording. When you want to correct your problems in a recording, we use the equalizer. A very good friend of mine once said, OT of Dennysarp production, he once said, if you are able to get your equalization correct, about 60 to 70% of the work is done. Especially in those of us who have been in the studio, live studios, and on the live front as well. Correct problems in a recording. It is the equalizer that will first hand you the tool and the needed space to correct problems in your recording. Then the second thing is that it is to improve instruments' clarity. We apply equalizers to improve instruments' clarity. Take note that the voice is also taken as an instrument. So when you are talking about instrument, don't limit your ideas to only keyboard, drums, guitars, no. The voice through the microphone is also an instrument. All right. So let's continue. Now, let's take the first one, correcting problems in recording. An equalizer can be used to compensate for shortcomings in a sound pickup or to reduce the unwanted sounds, such as noise. Remember that it is better to get the recording right first time around rather than trying to fix it in a mix. What do I mean to say? When you are recording for the first time, when you are recording to be taken into studio for post-production, make sure that everything you do there during the recording process is jeje, is right on point, so that you don't seem to be finding yourself so wanting in the studio or during your post-production, because it will become tedious, and sometimes it even mars the beauty of the whole recording. Okay, now let's also take a look at this one. Equalization should not be used as a way out of a bad recording when mixing. Equalization should not be used as a way out for a bad recording when mixing. Okay? Even though we are saying it can correct problems in recording, we are not saying that JBBR Basa do anything anyhow, do things haphazardly, and then just come back to say you are going to use the equalizer to correct it. No. We've all had our shares in the past where we went during our recording, we didn't pay much attention to even microphone pickups and their patterns. But now, due to knowledge, like these things that some of us we've read elsewhere and we are applying them, it's making our mixes better and better each day. We can only get better. It can only be better for each day. Okay? So, as you are recording, please make sure your thing is working before. Make sure it's working before you come to correct those minor problems. All right. After this, we'll go on a short commercial break, and then we will be right back to, if there is any questions and answers, we will take it there. Now, let's take a look at this. We are going to look at the tips to consider during and after a recording. I mean, we are still under the correction of problems. Okay? So on this note, let's take a look. Let's take a quick commercial break. When we are back, we will do. Okay, viewers, welcome back to this afternoon's lesson. we are still talking about equalization. And now we are looking at the application of equalization or equalizer in our day-to-day activities, in our recordings and our various recordings and our post-production events. Okay, so now let's take a look at before the break, I was on correcting problems in a recording. And so let's look at some of the tips to consider during and after a recording. Okay, now the first thing is that switch high-pass filters on when needing to eliminate unwanted low rumbles, for example, from local traffic. All right, what does this mean? On your screen, you see that there is a particular band that has been cut from left to right. What I mean is that from the 20 hertz all the way up to 1K. This is a high pass. High pass is also known as low cut. Okay, high pass is also known as low cut, and low cut is also known as low pass is also known as high cut. Okay, so they are used interchangeably like that. Please take note. All right. Now, what we mean is that you are going to have yourself a recording. You are going to have a recording for yourself. This recording that you are going to do, especially you are going to record maybe a female voice. And the place that you are working, there seem to be so much rumblings of low ends and low stuffs there. Beloved, don't hesitate to cut the lows or high pass that particular frequency by filtering it. So you can just cut it and save yourself from that kind of rumblings and hummings that may come through your recording. Cut it before you start recording. I had this experience during my early days in studio engineering when I was an attachment at Ablaze Studios. Askwa Kumasi, Senior Blaze agreed to. And then he was there with KAMEN Nkrumah. And anytime there was going to be a recording, because they know that they have the experience, before the recording in the studio, before the recording of a particular voice, they just cut down the low around 120 up to 120 hertz or 150 hertz. All right. And it is there that I figured out that, okay, so all those plosives and pum-pum that have been happening, you can cut it down from here. It was a very good experience for me. It was a very, very good experience for me. And from that time, I've never hesitated to do so. Okay. Now, let's also look at this. Switch low-pass filters on when needing to eliminate the interference and high-frequency noise, such as hiss or that produced from an air conditioning unit. For instance, you are recording a particular bass instrument or bass instrument. You don't need too much of the highs, so you can also filter that particular highs from there, all right, and cut it so that even that hissing sounds that comes from the air conditioning in that room, even if it's air conditioning in that room, you still have those kind of feeds in there. They also produce sounds, all right, so you still have it there, and then you just cut it so that you can equally work it. So on your screen now, you see a particular image that is switching off low pass filter kicking in at 1 kilohertz. 1 kilohertz. All right. And now let's move on. Another tip is that filter off any frequencies above 8 kilohertz for bassy instruments. I spoke about it. These frequencies are generally not audible but can still reduce extra noise, especially if there is a certain kind of pickup noise that comes from the bass guitar or lead guitar. So Sergio Manuel will tell you that, "Must cut my highs before I interfere in your sound." And it's true. He's an experienced guitarist, so whenever you play with him, he tells you, "Cut up to 8 kilohertz of my sound, of my frequency, so that we can enjoy the sound together." And I love that because he's an experienced guitarist who has known his tone and who has known what he does and does best. Okay, so now let's continue. So on your screen now, you see an 8 kilohertz low pass filter. You see an 8 kilohertz low pass filter. Okay, so these are some of the things you can do to improve or to correct the problems in your recording. Now let's move on to improve instruments clarity. This is the second point, the second application for a band, or the second application for using an equalizer. The second application in using equalizer. It is to improve an instrument's clarity. Now, equalization can help enhance an instrument's sound. It can help enhance an instrument's sound. Now, let's look at some of these tips under the harmonic, improving an instrument's clarity. Okay, harmonic and fundamental frequency rules. These are harmonic and fundamental rules. 1. Boosting the harmonics of the sound gives the impression of more presence and brightness. Listen, these are the rules of harmonic and fundamental frequency. How sounds can harmonize. So how frequencies can be harmonized. Okay, these are the frequencies. These are the rules, the laws governing it. The first rule says that boosting the harmonic of a sound gives the impression of a more presence and brightness. Boosting the harmonics of a sound gives the impression of more presence and brightness. 2. Decreasing the harmonics of a sound gives the impression of a dull, less dazzling sound. Okay, I take it again. Decreasing the harmonics of a sound gives the impression of a dull, less dazzling sound. The first statement or the first rule was that when you boost the harmonic of a sound, it gives an impression of presence and brightness. And my sound, it gives clarity to the sound. And something is really happening. Okay, the sound throws at you. It becomes present to you. If you know how to boost your harmonics well, between your 2 kilohertz up to, let's say, all the way to maybe 8 kilohertz, you get a good impression of the sound. But the more you decrease it, it gives a less dazzling and it gives more of an impression of a dull sound. I don't think you want to give your audience or your people a dull sound. However, the third point says that boosting a sound around its first fundamental frequency will promote warmth and depth. It will promote warmth and depth. What it means is that every instrument or every frequency has got its own, every instrument has got its own room frequency, its own home frequency. Okay? So if you able to work around that fundamental frequency of that particular instrument, you are likely to promote some depth and warmth. That is why I don't worry, because a keyboard has got a wide range of instruments, a wide range of vocals. Sorry. Because a keyboard has got a wide range of frequencies to play with because of its nature in tones. Okay? Because of that, every keyboard, I don't really worry myself with a lot of tunings, especially taking down so many frequencies out of it. No. I do rather cut down the low a bit, especially if the person is not the one working with piano. I cut down the low a bit, and then I work around my mid and high mid frequencies. Okay, and then when you do that, the keyboard becomes present. It becomes present because you are working within its own fundamental principles and its own fundamental frequencies. Okay, Now let's move on. Decreasing a sound around its fundamental frequency will promote a colder and less powerful sound, and it's true. So this particular point is the vice versa of the third point, and the second point is the vice versa of the first point. So these are the 4 rules. With these 4 rules, if you're able to go by them, you are good to go. Make sure you boost the harmonics of a sound to give its impression more of a presence and brightness. And also, make sure you also decrease the harmonics of a sound. If you are decreasing, be mindful of what you'll be doing. All right, now let's move on. And the third point also said, boosting the sound around its fundamental frequency, the frequency that it is made to work with, its own tone, its own pitch, its own timbre, its own color and characteristics. Okay, it makes it it promotes warmth and depth for it. Some warmness is in it. You feel the depth in it. Okay, and then we also said decreasing the sound will also, the sound fundamental frequency of that particular instrument will also promote colder and less powerful sound. Let's go on. Let's look at what we call muddiness. Muddiness. We are still trying to improve the clarity of an instrument using an equalizer. Don't forget, that's our subtopic. Clear improvement, the second application for equalizer or an equalization. We are trying to know how to improve the clarity of an instrument. The next thing that we talk about is muddiness. Muddiness. Emu muddy. Yes, I quite remember I gave a work to Dan Bassi of Bassi Mix to assess it for me, and he said, bro, you have to enhance it more because it sounds a bit dull and muddy. Some time ago. Okay, so it's good to know about this. The muddy area is focused between 100 to 500 hertz. I spoke about it last week in our episode 2, season 1, episode 2. I spoke about it that when you are looking at this particular range of frequency between 100 and 500 hertz, for vocals especially, I usually cut down my 400 hertz. Okay, muddiness normally comes from bass-heavy instruments. Bass-heavy instruments such as the kick drum, the bass guitar, and the lower end of the piano. So whenever I have somebody playing a piano who is focusing so much on the left-hand side, and then I also happen to have someone playing the bass guitar, I'd rather cut the low end of the pianist so that I don't have a muddy, or I don't entertain a muddy sound. Is that right with you? Is that right? Good. So when you go to a particular church, they have tied the low ends and said, we have a bassist, we have a bass guitarist. Okay, so that it will serve as a caution to the keyboardist or the pianist playing. Now, to reduce muddiness, scan the lower frequencies with a high Q value and a moderate boost level of about 8 dB. Once excess muddiness is identified, cut the signal right down. Can I have the camera here? Okay, so I'm going to work on this. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate how to do this for us to know how it goes. Okay, all right, in a brief moment, please hold on. viewers, thank you. Welcome back. Okay, so I was talking about reducing muddiness. Okay, reducing muddiness. For instance, if this is supposed to be my vocal microphone that I feel is muddy, right? I'll just come here. What I'm trying to say is that to reduce muddiness, scan the lower frequencies with a high Q value. And where is my Q value? So I'm scanning my lower frequencies using this. If you can see, using the frequency volt 1. All right. So, all right. Now I can figure out that there is much of lowness or low muddiness here. Okay. So I'll just increase the Q. This is the Q. This is what the Q is about. If you are using an analog board and you see that Q thing over there, this is what it does actually to your sound whenever you work around it. Okay, so he says scan around it, and then once the excess whatever is found, okay, cut it to, let's say, about 8 dB. Okay, right? Then you bring it down, you bring it down, you bring it down. Have you seen that? I have cleared my voice. You've cleared it. Had it been up, it would have been like this. This is how it sounds in your ears. It's not good enough. So I just take it down, and then that's it. So I scanned around the area or the region where there could be too much muddiness within the low ends in your ears. This is how it sounds. And then I increased my Q, and then I dipped it down. I attenuated it. All right, that's how it goes. Okay, all right. Now cut the signal strength right down, and then slowly bring up the gain control until there is a good balance. Until there is a good balance between the body and the muddiness. In as much as you are cutting it down, you should also be thinking about the fatness of your sound, so that it doesn't sound hollow. Okay, so I have a caution here that exercise caution when cutting frequencies, and do not cut the same frequencies on all the sounds, else your sound become very, very hollow. If you are cutting down any sound, you just have to be careful. Now let's also look at honk. The honk area, I spoke about it, the honky area, that is within the region of 500 hertz to 3000 hertz, or the 3 kilohertz. That is within that region. The honk area, 500 hertz up to 3000 hertz. Okay, so I have about 500 hertz between here up to all the way to 3000 hertz. It sounds honky. Okay, and it determines how prominent an instrument is. It determines how prominent an instrument is in the mix. So excess output at that range can also sound cheap, boxy, and can cause unwanted ear fatigue. Yeah, let me demonstrate it. Let me just get it demonstrated to you. Too much of this sound is what I'm talking about. You hear in your ears that it sounds like a pilot reporting to a plane station or a train station somewhere. Okay? Too much around this area will always get you annoyed. Your ears will even be fatigued. So you cut it down, or you work around it, so that your sound doesn't sound, your voice or whatever instrument around that area shouldn't sound too boxy and so cheapy. Okay? So this is what you hear after it has been well curtailed and well handled. Okay? This is it. This is it. This is it. All right? As compared to before, between 500 hertz and 3 kilohertz, all right, or even 1 kilohertz. Even if it's 3 kilohertz, this is how it will sound. Okay? And your sound becomes quite honky. So we are not saying the honky sound is not good, though. It's good, but too much of it or excess of it will make your sound become that or sound very, very unpleasant to listen. So if boosting in this area, be very cautious, especially on vocals. Human hearing is extremely sensitive at these frequencies. I said this thing last week. Okay, and with the slightest boost or cut, resulting in a huge change in the sound. Yeah. So you just have to be careful whenever you're working around that area. Now let's continue. If there are any irritating frequencies, sweep through the sound with a medium curve at about 10 dB cut, 10 decibels cut. Very soon you'll just be moving into mixing properly. You just go through the basics of mixing. Okay? You just be going through the basics of mixing. All right? So the only thing you have to know is that you have to know where to cut and how to cut. I've already said this thing, that you have to exercise caution when cutting frequencies, okay? And do not cut the same frequency on all the sounds. All right. So this is what I'm talking about. Okay. All right. Shall we continue? Now, it may be necessary to compensate. For cutting in this area. It may be necessary to compensate any cutting in this area by applying a small amount of boost around the oh yes. It may be very, very, very appropriate that you do that. Is that right? Okay. All right. So if you don't compensate what I just did, for instance, I just cut down that low mid and that range of frequency over there. I just cut it down, but you could see that at the high end, I haven't dipped down so much so that I can have enough presence. Okay? I can have enough presence and enough brightness in my speech. Okay? Now, this will help you to preserve the overall brightness of your sound. All right. When applying equalization, it is advisable to use the large amounts of cut or boost initially. The large amount is what we term as the low cut. It's either I cut it so much before I come to attempt the other ones. You could see what is going on your screen, up and down there. All right. Do you see it? That's it. Yeah. Okay. So you can just do that. It's only good for you to go by that. Now, when applying equalization, I've already said that this helps to give a better idea of the frequencies being affected. The human ear can quickly become used to an unequalized sound. So quick successive burst on the gain knob until the frequency sounds about right is best. All right. Now let's look at the last point, the last application, so that we end our lesson for today. And then if God permits, from next week, we also look at the various enhancement frequencies. All right. So the third point is that create room and balance. It is the equalizer that helps you to create room and balance. It is the equalizer that helps you to create room. Now, the equalizer can be useful for creating space in the mix by balancing frequencies. If certain instruments occupy a similar frequency band, they will mask each other within that particular area of the audio spectrum, often resulting in a muddy sound. What we mean is that
For instance, a bass guitar is competing with a keyboard, a piano bass within the region of 100 hertz. Which one do you have to take it down so that one can stand out better than the other, or they can balance off each other? You have to obviously take down the basic nature of the of the keyboard. Just take it down. Is that right? When you take it down, it will give room and space for the bass guitar to explore, and so that the keyboard can also stand out. It doesn't become so muddy. Okay? So it is the equalizer that helps you to create room and balance. Let's continue. Now, note that to allow instruments to best fit together, there has to be some juggling of frequencies so that each instrument has its own predominant frequency range. And as I've said, in the coming days, we'll be looking at some of these stuffs visually or basically with a band. Let's say a 3-piece band. They will be playing in the studio where we analyze everything. They will play, let's say, a minute of play, and then they will go into, we just take a break. We look at how each and every individual frequencies are being spelled for each and every instrument. Okay? And then when we are done, we just bring it back to its original position. We play, and you, the users or the viewers, will compare and contrast. And you will see what we are talking about, that we are not just talking about theory, but we are talking about the practical nature of it as well. Okay? So if a kick drum is heavy and powerful in the 80 hertz, but getting muddied up by the bass line, cutting the bass line around this frequency will free up a valuable mixed room, allowing for the kick to shine through after this. Okay? So if you are an engineer, or if you are a vocalist, or whoever uses instrument or sound to play or to work around these areas, you can just work around this. You can just tell your sound engineer who is hosting the event, and you tell him the range which you feel you have learned so much about, okay, which you feel can help you minister best, which will help you to minister best, okay, so that you can talk about it. So today we just ended. We are going to end here for our lesson. We are just ending here with our lesson. And as I've already said, let me quickly run through what we just did today. Today we spoke about what equalization is, what an equalization is. Okay? So with equalization, we just spoke about the meaning of an equalization and what equalizer does. We spoke about what equalization is and what equalizer does. We also spoke about the instrument called equalizer, the equipment called equalizer. Okay? And then we also looked at places where equalizers are used. Okay? And we also looked at some of the usefulness of equalizers, the uses of equalizers. All right. Some of the uses of equalizers. And then we also looked up the three major or three common applications for equalizer, including correcting of problems in a recording, improvement of instruments' clarity, and creating room and balance. Okay. And through that, we have looked at the various rules and filters that comes in all these. We looked at some 4 basic harmonic and fundamental frequency rules. And those when we said boosting the harmonics of a sound gives the impression of more presence and brightness. Decreasing the harmonics of sound gives the impression of a dull and less dazzling sound. The third rule says that boosting a sound around its first fundamental frequency will promote warmth and depth. And the fourth point, or the fourth rule, says that decreasing a sound around the fundamental frequency will promote a colder and less powerful sound. Okay? So we also looked at how you can get rid of some muddiness and some honky tones or some honky frequencies in your work. or in your frequencies and in your various works. All right. So these are and many more are what we just did today. I'll be expecting your comments and your various platforms like the Facebook Emsarp Music page, as well as the the YouTube page over there. We also spoke about the creating of room and balance. Creating of room and balance, where we said you have to make sure you can ring out the various frequencies that compete with each other for space, so that you can, and be mindful of whenever you are cutting down a particular frequency, make sure you don't cut down a particular frequency from all the sounds or from all instruments, else you make your sound very dull and monotonous, or in one way to hear. All right, so this is where we end our lesson for today. God willing, next week we will look at enhancement frequencies, or frequencies that helps to enhance the various instruments as we move on. All right, we look at the ones that we can cut, the ones that we can boost, the ones that we can help to make them round, the ones that we can use it to make it clear or give some clarity and muddiness, the ones that can help you to bring out the attack in that song or in that particular instrument, and so on and so forth. So, beloved, we end it here today. And as I said, this program is made possible by Emsarp Music and IT Services. Very soon, we'll be taking you through the IT aspect of sound. We'll be taking you through the IT aspect of our works, okay? In terms of networking, in terms of programming, we'll be having that section of tutorials as well. We'll be having some tutorials and in terms of graphic design and graphic applications, okay, multimedia content creation, and so on and so forth. Very soon we'll be going through all that. All right, and so this is for sound, this is for music. All right, and as I said, in our seasons that are upcoming, we'll be looking at some practical sessions. We'll be having a live session with the band and with singers who will be also playing each and every day, all right, for us to apply all that we have learned theoretically. Okay, you'll be applying all of them theoretically. So this program is made possible by Emsarp Music and IT Services, and with the help of Design Impact. A very big shout out to Dennis, my personal assistant. Though sometimes you'll be some off way somehow, but God is good. It is well. All right. So all the background sounds you heard, or the background music during our break, were all done by Emsarp Music and IT Services. Okay. So you can contact us for all your musical needs and all your musical sound reinforcement projects and everything, auditoriums, pubs, and whatever. Thank you. God bless you. See you same time. See you next week. God be with you till we meet again. Bye-bye.